Hey everyone, it's Brandy and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing my September wrap up. In September I read a total of 14 books. I have a couple stats that I want to go over before I get into the actual books, and then also I'm going to be splitting this into two sections pretty much for this wrap up since I participated in a readathon during September. So first let's get into the stats. So like I said, I read a total of 14 books. Over those 14 books, I read a total of 4,092 pages, and my overall rating was 3.85 stars for the month. If you were around BookTube or anything around it, if you were on my channel at all, I did post about the readathon that I took part in September, which was Contemporary-a-thon. It was round 3 of this readathon, and it took place from September 17th to the 23rd. And for that readathon, I read a total of 4 books, I believe. And I do have an entire reading vlog for that week, and I go into details about each of those books. So I'm not going to be spending too much time on those. I'm just going to go over what those books were and what I rated each of them. The first book that I finished during the Contemporary-a-thon was Stripped by Zoe Castile, and I gave this one a 4 out of 5 stars. Next, I read Skip Beat Volume 41 by Yoshiki Nakamura, and I gave this one a 5 out of 5 stars. Then I read Food Wars Volume 25 by Yuro Sakuda, and I gave this one a 4 out of 5 stars. And the last book that I finished during the readathon was A Duke by Default by Alyssa Cole, and I gave this one a 4.5 out of 5 stars, but I think since then I have decided to just give it a 5 out of 5 stars. You guys could definitely go check out that vlog, because like I said, I do talk in detail about each of these books, because I'll talk about them as I finish them. So for all of the other books, I'm going to go back to my normal way of talking about them, which is going from my lowest rated to my highest rated. During September, I didn't have any 1 or 2 star reads, so my lowest rated was 3 stars, and that was Hot Spell by Mia London and Susan Sheehy. This is the second book in the Sweet Escape series. I was able to read and review this one, so I do have a written review up on my blog as well as Goodreads if you guys are interested in checking that out. This series follows 3 friends, and in each of the books they go on this vacation, and one of the friends basically finds a romantic interest, and it's pretty much their love story. However, I think this is possibly a novella series because each of the books is under 200 pages. The first book I was really surprised by, which I'm not really going to get into that because I didn't read that this month. And with that, but because I was so excited about that one, or I was surprised by how much I enjoyed that one, I decided to go ahead and try the second book in the series. Now, I feel like all of the issues that I was worried about going into the first book because it was so short, those appeared in the second book. I think this one was either under 100 pages or it was like just over by a couple pages over 100, but I'm pretty sure it was under 100 pages, and there wasn't enough time to develop the characters and their relationship. And one of the big issues that I had with the first book kind of carried on to the second book as well, and that was the 2 main characters. They got into this relationship, but they kept saying like, well, this is just a vacation thing, after this it's not going to be anything else. And they never discussed it with each other about maybe possibly something happening past their vacation, especially considering both of the main characters were really attracted to each other and they had a connection on a deeper level than just the sex that they were having. So that kind of frustrated me. And mainly with this one, it was basically that there was not enough time to like fully develop the characters and their feelings and the whole plot. There was a lot going on in this one. There was, I think, at least 2 or 3 subplots underneath the overarching plot, and it was just a lot. And I enjoyed not the feeling. I enjoyed the basic the overarching plot, but all the other little things, I just felt like it was too much being crammed into the story. I think I might have mentioned this when I talked about the first book, but one of the factors that like made me really love the story is the relationship between the three friends. They're always there for each other and they're always really supportive, but they're also the type of friends who will call each other out on their BS when it's necessary. So I really appreciated that. The next book that I gave 3 out of 5 stars to was Fight or Flight by Samantha Young. This one follows this woman named Ava, and she is on her way back to Boston from Phoenix, and her hometown is Phoenix, but she has since moved, and you know, her life is in Boston. So she's on her way back. We know that she is really distraught. We don't really know what has happened yet, but she is on her way to the like check-in counter at the airport to try to upgrade her flight to first class. And when she gets there, she ends up getting like knocked out the way about this guy, and he ends up stealing her, you know, still in the first class seat because the guy at the ticket counter kind of takes him before her, even though she was on her way up there. So right off the bat, these two characters really don't like each other, and from that point on, they keep bumping into each other at this airport. Their flight actually ends up getting canceled, and she ends up asking if there was another way that she could, you know, get a flight to Boston, like a connecting flight. So she ends up getting another flight. Long story short, because I'm about to go through like the whole first part of the book. Long story short, they decide to have a sexual relationship with each other. It's like we don't like each other, but we have this physical attraction, so we might as well act on it, basically, because they end up having like a layover for a night in Chicago before, you know, heading off to Boston. So they agreed to have this physical relationship, and then he is the guy whose name is Caleb Scott, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, he is in Boston or he was on his way to Boston for business. So he ends up being there for 2 weeks, and after some unforeseen circumstances, they end up getting thrown back together, and they come to an agreement to basically have an intimate relationship, or really just a physical relationship with each other for the time being while he was, you know, in Boston. So they have this going on, and it's just supposed to be physical, but as you can expect with a romance novel, things begin to develop more, and both of them have their issues. I was back and forth about this one. I really wanted to like it more, but I feel like it had so many issues that a romance coming out today should not have. I knew about a few of the things before going into it because I have seen some people reading it and talking about it. So there was a scene in the book where like they were in the middle of having sex, and she basically told him to stop because he needed, you know, they weren't using protection, and you know, he basically did not listen to her for like a good minute. She had to basically plead with him like, please get protection, before he stopped. And then he made it, you know, he made a really big deal about it because of his physical feeling. And I was just like, you know, you know, I don't care how pleasurable it feels to you. If she wants protection, she should have the right to have that protection, because, you know, nobody wants to have a random baby, just, you know, especially considering this is just supposed to be a physical thing. So that I didn't like, and his whole attitude throughout the book was just really, I don't know, like, don't get me wrong, I hate to love romance. However, I don't like when a guy is intentionally being a jerk because he's trying to push you away. And that's what Caleb was doing throughout the majority of the story. I just could not fully commit to the story because of how bad his attitude was. That's why this one got a 3 out of 5 stars for me. I rambled on again about another book. But yeah, I had strong opinions about this. I need to write the review so I can like share it and everything like I was supposed to. But that's what I have for now. The next book that I have, I gave 3.5 out of 5 stars to, was Blood Highway by Gina Walsdorf. This story is following this character who is 16 or 17, I believe. I can't exactly remember her name. she does not have the best life. We don't necessarily understand what's going on in her home life because, or at least I didn't. I was kind of really confused because at the very beginning of the story, she was on this bus trip and I thought she was running away. But it turns out she was like on her way back home. So I'm not really sure what was going on with that. But she lived with her mom, and it was hinted at that her mom had some mental illness or something, but we never got a clear understanding of what she possibly had. But at this point in her life, her mom had like locked up everything. So she locked up all the cabinets and the refrigerator so she couldn't get to any food or anything. So she is basically forced to take care of herself. But she comes home from school one day and she finds out that her mother is dead. Her mother has killed herself. So basically, her father has gotten out of jail. She always thought her father was dead. He has gotten out of jail. He has come back to actually, I think he was coming to find her mother, but obviously her mother killed herself. So he kidnaps her to try to get her to take him to this money that her mother stole back when they were together. This book was not what I was expecting at all. This was so dark and so twisted, and I was shook. I think that's the best way to say it. We have her father come in, and he was crazy too. So when he came into the picture, he was basically trying to make it seem like he was, like he was okay, and he was just taking her along for a trip. Is basically how he made it seem. And there was so much that happened, and like I don't even know how to explain it. It was very interesting, and it had me intrigued, and I was really invested in the story and what was going to happen. There was also some things that I just wasn't really the biggest fan of, and I think that it was supposed to be that way. Honestly, I have no words for this one. I would suggest you guys check this out because I feel like this might be a book that some people love, some people hate. But I will say that it was really interesting. Now I'm going to move on to my 4-star reads, and I have 5 of those, I believe. And in no particular order, the first one I have is 10 Reasons to Stay by Candace Noble. This was another book that I got for review. I have already written and posted that review, so you guys can go check out this one if you're interested. This one follows this main character. I cannot remember the characters' names. It's been over a month now since I've read that I'm filming this. So I can't remember, but we're following this woman who she is married, and her husband approaches her, and basically he wants her to have an open marriage. I don't know what his reason really was for it, but he wants to have an open marriage. She doesn't, but she ends up agreeing to it because their marriage isn't the best, and she figures maybe he'll be happier if she agrees to this open marriage. So she decides to try it out, and she goes onto some app, and she ends up meeting this guy. Turns out the guy is her husband's boss. And at first she's like, I'm not going to do this because, that's not right. And she really didn't want to do it. But one thing leads to another, and she ends up agreeing to have this relationship with her husband's boss. And I never thought that I would enjoy a story about open marriages and cheating. I know you could probably argue that it might not be cheating because they both agreed to this. However, her husband was also doing more than they agreed on, and I didn't like her husband at all. We're just gonna say that. There was also this aspect of like she was following for this guy, and he was way better to her than her husband, and he wanted more, and they talked about this, and the title came in because it's like every time they were with each other, he would always ask her to stay, the guy that she met, and she would ask him why, and he would give her a reason, but she would never stay. And there was one point where when she said, when I stay is when you'll have me, and that kind of broke my heart. But anyway, this was very interesting. Like I don't even know how to express how I felt about this, because on one hand I was really angry because of everything that was going on with the main character and her husband and everything her husband was doing. And then when he found out that she had, that she's actually seeing someone as well, he got mad. And, I was just like, you're the one who wanted this. And he kind of took advantage of the fact that, he knew that she wanted to stay in this relationship. There's a lot going on. I never thought I would like this kind of book, but it was highly enjoyable. I don't think everyone would enjoy this because of the subject matter, but I think if you're interested in this, I definitely suggest you guys check it out because it was really well done, which is why I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. So the next two books I'm going to talk about together because I read them like back to back. That is Halfway to the Grave and One Foot in the Grave, both by Janine Frost, and this is the first and second book in the Night Huntress series. This follows this girl named Kat. She is in her early 20s. I think she's about 22. And she is a half vampire. Yeah, her mother got raped by a vampire. And it was because he was a new vampire. And, he still had some of his human bodily fluids. So, yeah, he raped her mom. And she was born. And basically, she is a self-employed vampire hunter. So she goes out to different clubs around her area and she just finds vampires and kills them. And one day she stumbles upon this one vampire named Bones, and I don't know what number victim he would have been, but she tries to kill him, and he's not one of the newer vampires that she has been interacting with before, and he knocks her out and kind of takes her back to his hideout and questions her and all of these things. He basically gives her a deal to either work with him or he is going to kill her. So they end up working together, and he is picking out different targets, and he's going to basically use her as bait. That's pretty much the premise of the very first book, like the very beginning of the first book. This is like an urban fantasy paranormal romance, so I'm not going to really get into all the details. Well, see, that's kind of the sucky part. I don't want to really get into it, but that kind of leads into the second book, so I can't really talk about that one too much either because I don't want to spoil it. But yeah, I'm just going to leave it at that. I did read the first and the second book in the series. The next 4-star read that I have is 1,000 Beginnings and Endings, and this is an anthology that was edited by Ellen O and Elise Chapman. This is, like I said, an anthology that has, I don't remember exactly how many stories that were in here, but we have a list of authors. As you can see, I think that's all the authors on the back that were included in this, and I thought this was a really good and interesting anthology. Obviously, I did not enjoy all the stories. Some of them did not make sense to me. Others I just did not like as much as others. So I think overall it was just really good. As I was reading, I did rate each story. I'm not going to get into that in this video just because that's going to take a while, but just know that overall I think this was a pretty good anthology, and I think people should pick this up. The last 4-star read that I had in September was Trail of Lightning by Rebecca Roanhorse. This is taking place in the future. It is set in the United States, but it's no longer going by the term the United States. There has been this really big flood in the majority of the world, and it doesn't exist as we know it now. And there is this Navajo reservation that survived the flood, but they're basically living in poverty, and they have had a drought. So while the rest of the land was was flooded, they have this drought that's been going on for a while, and it's not good. We're following this character named Maggie, and she is a monster hunter, and everyone in this Navajo reservation knows her as a monster hunter. So she is called upon to help find this missing girl, and she realizes once she goes to look for this girl that there might be some bigger things at play This was really good. It took me a little bit to get into it. I will say that it was a little slow, and I don't know if it was because of the actual book and writing or if it was because of my mood. It could have been a little of both, but I'm not completely sure. It took me a little while to get into this, but once I got hooked into the story, it was really good. I think this is the first time that I have read a book centered around a Native American character. Actually, no, that's not true. But the other book I just was not a fan of at all in the writing. And this is an Own Voices novel as well, so that's an added benefit. But we go on such a journey with Maggie as she is discovering all of these things and having to do all of these things that she was kind of trying to avoid before. She used to work with this guy who was a god or something like that, and he ended up leaving her, and she didn't know. She thought it was because of her actions and something that was inside of her that made her inherently bad. So she was kind of trying to avoid anything that could possibly trigger this reaction that she had and make things worse. So she was kind of, I think for almost a year, she was isolated and she wasn't really doing anything for work. So we follow her as she has to kind of go back into that world that she isolated herself from. And like I said, she goes on quite a journey, and she ends up having this partner named Kai, and it's a lot going on, but it's really good, and I definitely think you guys should check this out. I gave this one a 4 out of 5 stars, and I can't wait until the next installment in the series. I can't remember what the name of it is right now, but I'm really looking forward to that one. And the last book that I have to talk about in this video is a book that I gave 4.5 stars to, and that was Monday's Not Coming by Tiffany D. Jackson. This is following this character named Claudia. She is best friends with this girl named Monday, and after coming home from her summer vacation, her mother sends her off to, I believe, Georgia with her to stay with her grandma for like 2 or 3 months, however long throughout the summer. So this summer she is coming back, going into 8th grade, and she made a promise with her best friend, like I said, who's Monday, that they would send letters and stuff to each other back and forth all summer because she's not allowed to use her grandmother's phone, and that was the only way they could stay in contact. So she comes home, she hasn't heard from Monday all summer, and she's asking her mom, has she seen her, has she talked to her? And she tries to get in contact with her, but as soon as she tries to call her house phone, she realizes the phone is disconnected. And we're basically going on this journey with Claudia as she realizes that Monday's missing because she doesn't show up for school the next day. And then, a day turns into a week, into months, and we realize that Monday is missing. And she keeps bringing it to the attention of different adults, and honestly, none of the adults really take her too seriously. They're just like, oh, well, she's not here. Well, yeah, we'll look into it. But then, no one would do anything, or, it was kind of an afterthought. This was a really heartbreaking story. I want to do a separate review for this one. I have started to do it, but I could not get my words together. So I am going to try to do that and possibly have this up next week sometime. Hopefully a review for this book. But this was such an interesting take on a missing person, and the inactions of so many people. We get to see, so like I said, the main character Claudia goes to so many different people, and so many people kind of blow her off. And there was even a time where she went to the police, and the guy kind of told her, the officer basically told her, like, you see all these people, these missing girls, you not knowing if your friend is really missing is taking away the time from these people that we need to be looking for. And he kind of almost shamed her for saying that she thinks her friend is missing or something's wrong because she hasn't seen her, I think at that point, for like almost a year. And the reason I did not give this a 5 out of 5 stars is because of I'm not really going to get too much into it because I don't want to spoil it for anybody, but a way that the actual, like, a certain part of the book or a twist in the book I didn't really enjoy, because I was kind of confused reading it, because in this book the book is kind of split into 2 sections. We have the before and the after. So you know, it's centered around this big event of basically Monday being missing and wondering what happened. And you know, the big point is figuring out what happened to her, but you don't necessarily know that at the beginning because I think it starts with let me double check because I don't remember what it starts with. So it starts with the month, which is when Claudia comes home from her summer vacation, and then it goes right into the before. So most chapters are either the before or the after, and then we have some chapters that are that's like a year before the before. So we're getting, those chapters are really getting more background on Monday and Claudia's relationship, and you know how everything wasn't necessarily perfect between them, and kind of getting more insight into Monday's background as well. This is definitely a book that I feel like everyone needs to pick up and read. It is completely different from The Hate U Give, but it deals with some of those same hard-hitting topics that people don't necessarily think about. Like, I'm getting emotional just thinking about it, so I don't want to talk too much about it because I want to, like I said, do a separate review, which I think I might actually go into and discuss and do spoilers so I can like kind of get my thoughts out on those things that I don't want to mention here. This is amazing. You guys should go pick this up because yes, I need to go get this signed, and I need more people to read this so people can talk about this with me. So go pick it up from your library. I don't know, just read it, please. So those were all the 14 books that I read in September. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, if you want to hear more about my thoughts for the books that I read during the Contemporary-a-thon, make sure to go check out that vlog. Let me know what you guys read in September, and if you have read any of the books that I talked about, let me know what you thought about them down in the comments. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, and if you would like to see more from me, make sure you subscribe. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you guys again in the next one. Bye.